Hello everyone, Gebatron here. In this video we're going to talk about the offensive game mode in the video game Hell Let Loose, specifically from the perspective of the attackers. First we're going to talk about the game rules, how the game works, then we're going to move into the overtime mechanic, and then towards the end of the video we're going to talk about some real basic strategies for the attackers in offensive mode. The developers made some big changes to offensive mode in Update 6, and they also added a new offensive map, St. Mariglis, in patch 11. This video is going to be heavily edited. There may be some changes in strong points from section to section, so please bear with me. Also stick around to the end of the video for a couple of channel updates. Okay, let's get into it. Right away we pop into this screen. Let's click on the commander, and at the bottom right hand you'll notice it takes about 110 seconds to deploy. That's only for your first deployment. Every deployment after that will be normal. Here as the attackers we only have one HQ spawn to spawn in at. The reason that it takes 110 seconds is so each team can kind of get a game plan going. Something else you'll notice right away is that here in columns I and J, the first zone, there is only 1 point to fight over. You have 30 minutes to take this 1 point. Let's hit tab, and at the top left here you'll see the resources. We start off with 1,000 munitions plus 0 per minute. We start off with 1,000 manpower plus 0 per minute and 1,000 fuel plus 0 per minute. So you start off with a lot of resources but no gain per minute. The reason there's no gain per minute is because we currently do not control any strong points. Speaking of strong points, you'll notice we can only see the first strong point. All the other strong points in the map are invisible to the attackers until they take a previous strong point. So once we take this first strong point, the 2 strong points in columns G and H, the second zone, will become visible. It's important to note that the defenders can see all of the strong points. You'll see at the top of the screen we have 30 minutes to capture the first strong point. Once we capture this first strong point, we will gain an additional 30 minutes to capture the next 2. Offensive mode differs from warfare mode insofar as how strong points are captured. In warfare mode, you only have to be in the same sector as the strong point to begin the cap process. In offensive mode, however, you have to be inside the strong point itself. Here you'll see we're outside of the strong point. Let's hit T to bring up our HUD. You can see we are not capturing, but if we move inside the strong point, we will begin capturing the point. If at any point during the capturing process our team is forced outside of the cap point of the strong point, the point will return to the defenders automatically. In order to take the point, you must stay in the point. Now let's talk a little bit about where we can move and where we can build and things like that. I see most of the confusion in this game mode comes from people not really understanding where they can and can't go and why they can and can't go there. You can operate and build in the active zone. One further than that, you can move, but you cannot build unless you're recon. You can build an OP, and then 2 zones over, you cannot move at all. Just to show you guys here, I have moved up to the border between H and I. As long as we stay in the I column here, we're able to build garrison, but as soon as we cross over, it will say cannot place in locked enemy territory. However, note we are still able to move into columns G and H. Okay, here I have moved up to the border between columns F and G to show you guys what happens if you try to move into column F. Right now we're in column G, so everything's okay, but if we try to move up into column F, we will get a turn back notification with a 10-second countdown. If we stay in here for 10 seconds, we will automatically be killed. As we're capturing the first point, I want you to note here that a default map tank has spawned in. Just be aware that these tanks will spawn in automatically and it will drain your fuel resource. You can see up here we went from 1,000 to 950. As we're about to capture the first point here, keep an eye on the time at the top of the screen. We will go from roughly 14 minutes to a fresh 30 minutes. You can see now that the next 2 points have become available, the cemetery and artillery battery. We have 30 minutes now to capture both of these points. We will not gain a bonus by only capturing one. We will have to capture both points in order to keep the game going. Now that we've captured the first point and the second zone containing 2 points is active, we can move and we can build now in columns G and H. We will be able to move but not build in columns E and F, and no one will be able to enter columns C and D. As we're about to capture the cemetery, keep an eye on the time at the top of the screen. We will not get a time bonus from only capturing 1 point. We will have to capture the artillery battery as well if we want our fresh half hour. Also be aware that just because we captured the cemetery does not change our movement and building rules. As artillery is about to fall here, keep an eye on the timer at the top of the screen. We have a fresh half hour. If we hit M, we will be able to move and build in E and F, move but not build in C and D, and no one will be able to enter A and B. Now that we've captured the zone containing columns E and F, we will be able to move and build in columns C and D. We will be able to move but not build in columns A and B. Okay, now we've pushed the Germans all the way back here to their lines, back into columns A and B, the very final zone. And you're probably asking, well, Gebatron, I know how the game starts out. I know where I can and can't move, where I can and can't build. I know how to capture a point, and I know how to get a fresh 30 minutes. But how do I win the game? You win the game by capturing 8 strong points. Now you're probably saying to yourself, Gebatron, I see 9 strong points. That's correct, but you only need to capture one of the 2 final strong points in order to win the game. We have moved into Volville, or maybe because it's French it's pronounced Vailleville. I don't know. Anyway, we've moved into it. We're about to capture it. Once we do, we will have won the game. Victory. Okay, those are the basic rules to how offensive mode works from the perspective of the attackers. Let's move on and talk about the overtime mechanic. Okay, the first thing that you need to know about the overtime mechanic is that it is directly tied to your manpower resource. Okay, now we only have about 30 seconds left. If I remain outside of the strong point like I am right now and we run out of time, we will lose the game. However, if I move into the strong point and we begin capturing the strong point when we run out of time and we still have manpower, it will use our manpower resource to count down. Keep an eye on the top timer at the top of the screen. Now it switches to our manpower. As long as we can continue to capture this point and have manpower, we can extend the time of this game and we can turn the tide. You're probably wondering, well, how do I make sure we have a lot of manpower? Well, remember, you start off with a lot of resources, so early in the game, this is an option for you. However, if you don't build resource nodes as you move through the map, you may not have very much manpower at the end of the game. Another way to preserve manpower is to rely on the medics to revive you. Instead of respawning, wait for the medic. If you want to learn more about how resources work, check out the video at the top right hand corner. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. We have a lot of manpower because no one has been dying in this game. I'm in here alone, so we will capture this point. However, if we were to run out of manpower and not capture the point, we would lose the game. If I were to back out of the point right now, we would also lose the game. You must be capturing in the point for this to work. Now we have gained ourselves another half hour and extended the game and revealed our next 2 strong points. Alright, that's the overtime mechanic. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Now let's move on to some basic strategies. Okay, early game, the most important thing is to capture this first point. I've built these 3 garrisons here just to show you that it's important to have multiple angles of attack on a point. Not only will it help you capture the first point, but it will also help set up for any future attacks, say on the artillery battery or the cemetery here. We're at least a little closer. If you don't build any additional garrisons to attack the point from, the only place you have to spawn is the initial HQ, and the enemy will know that, and it will be easy for them to cut you off. Now that we've captured the first point, 2 new strong points become available to us. Now we have a choice to make, what I like to call single point versus dual point strategy. Some people like to attack one point with the entire team, and other people like to split up between the two. I have seen both ways work. I prefer to split my team up. I feel it allows the team to be more versatile, and it allows you to find the weak points in the enemy's lines. Once you find those weak points, you can exploit it. Let's say artillery battery is more heavily defended than Maison du Creek. Well, then I can send more of my team down to Maison du Creek. And if we are successful at capturing Maison du Creek, they will send more people from artillery battery, which will lessen the pressure there. And sometimes you can capture both points really close back to back. If you can capture them like that, sometimes you can catch them off guard, and the rest of the game just becomes a steamroll as they're unprepared defensively. If you attack only one point with your entire team at a time, you don't have that ability. Okay, now we moved a little further into the map, and I'm going to talk a little bit about defense. Now, Gebatron, why would we want to talk about defense? We're on the offensive here. We're the attackers. Well, keep in mind that the defenders are able to move into your territory. Their movement rules are similar to your movement rules. Right now, with the map the way it is, the defenders would be able to build and move in E and F. They would be able to not build but move in G and H. That means that all of the garrisons you have in columns G and H can potentially be destroyed by the enemy. Just because the active zone is up here with Checkpoint and St. Mary-Glise does not mean that everything is safe back here at Artillery Battery Maison du Creek. However, note that once you capture the very first point, the enemy will not be able to enter columns I and J. Also, while we're talking about defense, a good defensive team will have built resource nodes up here in columns I and J. So as you're moving through the map, make sure you're looking for enemy structures and dismantling them whenever possible. The defenders don't start off with a lot of resources, but they do start out with a high gain per minute and the potential to gain high resources per minute. Speaking of nodes, now that we've moved into columns G and H and we can build here, and we can also build in columns E and F, it's a good idea to get your own nodes up, especially manpower. We learned that manpower can force the game into overtime, and sometimes it can turn the tide of a game. If you're interested in learning more about resource nodes and how they work, check for a link in the description below to a video I made about that. Okay, now we moved all the way through the map and we've pushed them all the way back into their own lines here. Now remember, you only have to capture one of these 2 final points to win the game, so you're presented with the same question as before. Do I attack one position with the entire team, or do I split my team up into 2 groups and try to attack both? I'm going to tell you, I've seen both ways work, but just like before, I prefer to split my team up into 2 groups. Maybe one group a little smaller than the other, but I like to put pressure on both. Something else I'd like to point out here is that flak position has a large circle, and La Prairie has a large circle as well. Sometimes right here in the middle, there's another strong point called Volville. I was really hoping it would show up, but it didn't. But it has a small circle. Here at the end of the game, sometimes it's more beneficial to go after the point with the large circle. This helps your team spread out a little bit, makes them harder to hit, especially if the enemy team is calling in air support or artillery support. Alright, there it is. I hope you guys learned something from that. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Just a couple channel updates. I took a little break there, but I'm back now and I will try to stick to an every other week schedule or something like that. Try to be a little more consistent. This video was really hard to make and it took a really long time. I made it a couple times and I deleted it. I did not like the way it turned out, so it took me a really long time to do this. Also, if you'd like to support this channel directly, there's a PayPal link in the description below. Remember to like this video, share it with your community, subscribe for more content just like this, and thank you so much for watching.